Hello everyone, my name is Jasmo. This is the 10-minute art critique with my co-host Bronwyn.
Howdy!
And Chris, the founder of Watch Me Work, which is what we're doing the critique show for. And Chris, if you have any updates for this site, let us know.
Okay, I do. So, thanks for having me on the show, by the way, guys. So I just feel so official now. It's amazing. So some new things with the site. We just included the feature that people will be able to delete their own streams from their channels now, which is so cool. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I know, Jasmine, you've seen that, but Bronwyn, have you noticed that it exists now?
No, I have not. That is a totally new update for me, and that is a bomb because, I have my goof ups sometimes where I have like 40-second blah, blah, blah is my thing working videos.
Yeah. So that's pretty exciting because it just makes that more into the hands of the creators, which is very exciting. So that's the main big update this week. And in the future, the very near future, we're going to have social media buttons in place, which is even more exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what I got there. Back to you.
All right. Today we're going to be critiquing a small introduction to a chapter, a mock book cover, and also a figure drawing. And we're going to be starting with the literature piece. And Pee-wee, the actual author of this small piece, is in the chat. Hello. Thank you for coming. Thank you for letting us critique your piece. I'm going to somewhat quickly read through it, and then Bronwyn and I will go through our notes and critique it. And if you have any questions or comments, pop them right in the chat. So this is Go ahead, Chris.
I'll just run color commentary as well.
Okay.
And say random things in between, if that's okay.
Pee-wee says, "Make me your lightning rod of hate."
Whoa! That's a little harsh.
It won't be that bad. So this intro chapter is Fearsome Devils by Caleb, a.k.a. Pee-wee. Chapter 1, Introduction. Greetings, child of the common race of man. I hope that my words find you enjoying the warm vacation of the mind that a book provides, sitting comfortably in a chair, perhaps maybe even nestled in front of the fireplace. I'm almost envious of those conveniences, but that envy falls short for the same reason that it falls for all of the children of Eder. Hopefully I said that right. My world comforts me with the joyous embrace of June. You may be curious to what June is, or why it won't extend its grasp outside of the woods of Eder. All this will be revealed if you care to listen. I find the need to let a story pass on to you, one of adventure and intrigue, one where a brave soul saves the lives of 2 villages from the jealous ire of a mighty king among devils, one where I am the hero. As I tell this story, I will not let slide who I am. I will save that until the end, but in ease on your mind I also wish to give. This story ends with a good overcoming evil, a triumphant celebration, and a great feast. Most importantly, I survived this story to tell it, so please humor my musings and enjoy the common comforts as this web is spun for you.
My first note is, Jasmine, you should read audiobooks.
Sorry.
Agreed.
You have no idea how red my face is right now. Okay. I get nervous. So, okay, we did have a lot of notes for you, Pee-wee. And I think the overarching theme of it would be less is more. So, Bronwyn, actually, if you want to screen share your notes.
Oh my notes? Oh no.
Okay, we won't screen share your notes. Okay.
Yeah, my notes were disjointed, remember?
Yeah, okay. Mine were a little, not so much disjointed. I highlighted the things that we both thought you could change or adapt just a little tiny bit. So, and this is, we're doing the mechanics, not the idea or the concept. To see this background material for an RPG, it might make sense that this is background material for an RPG. Okay. I don't actually think that really impacts what we just read. Even if it is for an RPG, it's still a story.
I agree entirely. Making those types of separations in the actual physical writing of it only, I think, affects it if you were writing it it was supposed to be in script format. So the formatting would change if it was supposed to be like a movie or something. For an RPG, the writing should still flow the same way as a novel or a short story.
Yes. Yes. All right. The mechanics, and to make things read a little more logically, we highlighted a few things. Sitting comfortably in a chair. Perhaps you may have even nestled in front of the fireplace. I'm almost envious of those conveniences. Those conveniences. I do have the other one. Okay, I have the final thing. We weren't sure what all of the conveniences you were referring to that the hero and his people don't actually have.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brahman.
We kind of cycled through it, like using the context clues. Like he could be referring to books. We could be referring to luxuries. He could be referring to fireplaces and armchairs. Overall, if you're trying to be vague, you should just choose to be vague.
Yes.
So I think we came up with a different sentence that could aid to that.
Yes. Can I just jump in there? I don't find that statement to be vague.
And if you could write a sentence or like re-edit the sentence, so like, so I guess the better way to say it is like, what do you believe the sentence is pointing towards?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's pointing to the chair and the fireplace.
Right, so those are oddly specific for an introduction, I think, why it stands out to us.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they were very specifically chosen in that sentence for being conveniences, because that to us means that these conveniences, having a chair and a fireplace, who wouldn't at least have a chair? Fireplaces might be a little more luxurious, but we were thinking luxury items might be of those conveniences that this person is mentioning. And also some clues is that my world comforts me with the joyous embrace of June. So this is something else entirely, and we kind of speculated it could be anything. And that anything could provide them with any of the luxuries that they so desired. So we don't really need to specifically mention a chair and a fireplace being conveniences, and it
makes it lengthier.
Yes, I was going to say, I'm like, it's almost a run-on, but not.
It's too well crafted to be a run-on. I agree. Like run-ons, yeah, they drone, but that's an actual purposeful sentence.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too much in addition to what is already going on in the paragraph. An introduction is supposed to grab the attention, and so short, sweet, to the point.
Yes.
Just as an FYI, we're at 6 minutes of our
shoot.
Okay. Faster.
So,
faster. Oh God.
FYI, and also too, I see what you guys are saying, but that doesn't particularly bother me.
And it probably won't. Different people who read this will definitely have different feelings and nuances about it.
Absolutely. Just like J.R. Tolkien appeals to some writers, and C.S. Lewis appeals to others. And they have two entirely different writing styles.
Yep. So that's actually kind of neat that we have a third opinion that is totally like, oh, I'm okay with that, and we're like, you could change it.
Okay, so next thing was, go ahead, Jazz.
I find the need to let a story pass on to you, and then one of adventure and intrigue. Just making the point that one of adventure of intrigue, you can really combine these two. Just slap in a comma. It will read a little smoother. It will still get the point across beautifully, just as well. Yes, we'll save this. And one where I am the hero, if you wanted to make that really, really pointed, and be like, I am totally the hero, you would just drop that down and make it its own statement. And then the last paragraph, you could actually nix the whole thing except for, I survived this story to tell it. because this last paragraph kind of acts like a spoiler for the rest of the book. I felt, because it ends with good overcoming evil. I'm like, there's the end of the story. Why should I read all the drama if I know it's going to turn out well? That's the question I had. Not a mean way, but I'm like, Triumphant Celebration, yeah, that sounds like the end of the book to me. The journey is now a little less important as to how they got there, because I know they will get there. I'm picky like that, though.
That also might be like something, just from our opinions and the type of literature that we read. I prefer not to have the beginning kind of over foreshadow the ending. I would prefer to be on the edge of suspense. I don't want like a sigh of relief at any point in time in the very beginning of the story. Maybe after something really critical happens, you could slide this paragraph in, like, I know, like, the four main characters just fell off a cliff, but don't worry, I put this paragraph here, keep reading the story. He agreed. Yeah. Chris?
I would agree with that as well, and we have a couple people in the chat that agree with it too. It looks like Platy Admirer is saying that they thought it would spoil it too. I actually, one thing that I noticed from that statement is just how many times the writer says I. And I've recently learned that people just inherently give credibility more towards people who say I the least. So if you're writing, and this goes for writing just about anything, and for whatever reason it is, it just seems less credible when you're constantly referring to yourself. So I would vote to strike at least that first sentence as well.
So yeah, Jazz, did you want to read out the altered version?
Yep. The final version that we edited together between me and Bronwyn is Greetings, child of the common race of man. I hope that my words find you enjoying the warm vacation of the mind that a book provides. I am almost envious of such a luxury, but that envy falls short for the same reason it falls for all the children of Eder. My world comforts me with the joyous embrace of June. You may be curious to what June is or why it won't extend its grasp outside of the woods of Eder. All this will be revealed if you care to listen. I survived this story to tell it, a story of adventure and intrigue, one where a brave soul saves the lives of 2 villages from the jealous ire of a mighty king among devils, one where I am the hero.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Much more powerful, yeah.
And that actually puts us at 10 minutes almost exactly.
Oh, skills, Jazz.
It's almost like we planned it.
Almost. Okay. Oh, okay. Pee-wee makes a good point. If you make it to the ending, that statement about being a hero and a great feast are part of a twist. Definitely a risk put into it. Oh, a risk that they put into it. Also, the overuse of I was intentional.
Okay.
But you'll stop and listen now.
It may come back. It may become an important part of the story then later, and that's really the key for all of this. Is everything's subjective, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And as long as you're aware of the rules that you're breaking or the rules that you're bending, that's all that matters.
Precisely. Couldn't have put a finer point on it. There are no real rules, you know what I mean? Except for the ones that all previous writers have created. And what do they know,
Very true. So, Pee-wee, if you'd like, I can email the altered version back to you, and if you'd like, you can later, if you want to edit it and send it back into us for the next time or the time after, please do. We would be more than happy to read over it again and see what changes you've made. Even if it's not on the show, I would love to see if you make any changes.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, that would be cool. That's always really cool to see when people continue to revise and resubmit stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right. On to the next.
On to the next. And
are we doing book cover?
Watching work chat. Chime in with your thoughts.
Yeah. Sorry, I spoke over you a little bit.
That's why it's a stream that's a little crazy.
But yeah, I thought we should do the book cover to keep the switching back and forth to a minimum.
Okay. Let's see. This book cover is a mock book cover that Platy Admirer made and sent in to us. And I'm hearing things in the background.
Yep.
That's Platy's piece.
Oh, okay.
Okay. What Platy actually asked for specific things to be critiqued: the composition, the proportion and perspective, and then using contrast and detail on the focus point is the painting guiding the viewer. Bronwyn, would you like to start?
All right. So if the first thing that you're supposed to focus on, like if you proportioned it out in a percentage, I would say that more than half of the focus is on the title and a lot less is on the girl. The general rule of, make things less important, less visible, kind of plays a huge part in book covers, because the whole idea of a book cover is to grab somebody when they are walking by. Because it's a stationary book, it's not like a trailer, it can't really speak to people, so it has to be able to be appealing at a glance. So standing out the very most is the title of the book, but it's overwhelming the page rather than complementing it.
I totally agree, and it's partly overwhelming the page because we can only really read half of the title, the lighter half, and it's so much brighter than anything else. Even the little water dragons down here, that's your eye is totally drawn there first, and then it's drawn to the little yellow dudes. So there is a little bit of a journey, but it's not very smooth.
Right. I personally am not a color expert like Jazz. I don't find a problem with choosing like a light gold or something like that for the font itself, but the gradient with the black, to me, it made it really hard to read. Like, I thought the title was something entirely different when I first glanced at it. So I would recommend a change in color. What in particular color? I'm gonna let Jasmine say.
I would actually keep this color, and instead of just fading it, I would just have it be the whole thing. You can still have the white outline, and maybe even like a dark outline and then a white outline. I would make the letters entirely either yellow or golden, or transition from this really bright yellow to an orange golden down here to still simulate that, yes, this is gold. Anything but black. Anything but black. I do see there's orange right here. If this orange traveled all the way down into a deeper red, that would definitely be better and make the title much more readable.
The starburst behind the letters destroys the illustration.
It hides it a lot, yeah.
Hides it, yeah. Because the illustration is beautiful, and you know what I mean. I would like to be able to see a lot more of it. I think that just the color changes in the letters would allow the title to stand out to where it could be read against the illustration. So I don't believe that the banner and the starburst is necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, this color gradient back here, you don't actually really need it, unless you kept the really, really blackness of the lines of the letters here. But if you brighten these up, they would stand on their own quite well, even against the background, which is actually pretty dark.
So on the focus side of things, I think we both agreed that if you were to cast a shadow over the lower half of her body and also fade some of the not important items into the background, we were referencing Little Mermaid a lot while we were looking at this, and the general rules kind of apply universally when you're talking about under the water, which is Jasmine's specialty.
Yep, you'll notice that, like, just in this very tiny tiny piece, that Ariel, she's bright, but then even if stuff is detailed around her, it's really faded, really blue. And in the background, here's a good piece of like underwater atmospheric perspective. This is just an example I pulled off of Google. But you'll notice that, yeah, you can still see stuff in the background, but they had no detail. All the detail is up in the front, And so this guy, this little red thing back here, would actually be really super faded, like barely noticeable, along with probably the black line near it and around it, because they're farther in the background.
And just to jump in here real quick,
Mhm.
Vladdy says, I had the starburst so the words would look more readable. If I make the words more readable, then I don't need the starburst, which is true.
Mhm.
And you said you have a tendency to use black a lot. Me personally, I'm not afraid of black because, you know, I don't have a lot of color sense myself, so I end up using a lot of black and gray. So I could totally understand moving towards that, especially when you do a lot of line art.
Yep.
So it's understandable. I did have a question. I'm glad you're in the chat. Behind her, does she have a tail?
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to know, like back there, if it's like shadow or if it's reeds or something. I can also understand it would also read as that, but it's just it's so mysterious.
Yes. What is this piece? Right here.
But that was just more of like a wonder than anything else. The only, like, the splash, the actual physical drawing of the splash effect is beautiful. I kept just going back to it and just being like, Jasmine, this is amazing. The only thing is that your smudge tool went in the wrong direction, and it ruins the effect a little bit. The whole thing still reads as like a powerful splash, except for the action line of that in particular part is supposed to be pointed towards the center.
So Platy says, so the background is too detailed? Question. I
No.
actually did a lot less detail than I usually do, but you made a valid point. She has dark magic trying to follow her. What's happening there?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
go ahead, Jez.
that looks like the only place that it is trying to follow her over here, since we can't see anything behind the wall of text and the gradient.
So yeah, if you change the banner, I think that'll solve that a lot. Any kind of mystery on that.
Mm-hmm.
The other question is, like, could you move the text? Would there be a potential better place to have the title?
So we did actually talk about that. Jazz, do you wanna? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I had that on mine. We did talk about like where generally the text should be replaced.
And just so you guys know, we're at almost 8 minutes of time.
So generally, if you made the font smaller, because it's so bright, it would still read. Also, you don't need all of that on the very front. We agreed that you could actually just keep a Sorcerer's Delight on the front, and a Heart of Diamond and Volume 1 could go on the sides, on the spine of the book, because usually they don't put that, if there's that much information in a title, they don't put it all on the front because of a crowding issue. They like to keep things generally less than a third on a book cover, especially one that's fully illustrated. And then as far as you said it was detailed, it's not the detail, it's how bright it is. So they can still be there, they just can't be as important as the figure itself, so they can't be as bright as her.
So basically you could make it smaller, you could move it slightly so you could see a little bit more in the background, and you'd still be able to read it easily without it covering up so much of the background.
Absolutely. Jazz, do you want to cover?
The proportion and the actual composition of this cover is nice. I like it. I like that you can see so much of her down here. The only thing I would change is some of the actual shading and lighting. These little guys look like they don't give off a ton of light, so you wouldn't be having all of these areas reflected light that's pretty far away from them, like on her hair, on this rock. On this rock, there's just a little tiny bit of rim light. You would either have to make these little dragon dudes brighter or darken these things around her. And if you darkened them around her, that could lend to some really, really dramatic shading on her face and on her arm. It would make it look much more like cryptic and mysterious.
Yeah.
I wish I had time to do a full paint over to show you what I mean.
Maybe you could do it on one of your regular streams at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, just the Sorcerer's Delight. I'm sorry, she said, can you show me where you want the title? It's not where we want it. It's just a suggestion that you take most of the text off of the cover of the book so it doesn't overwhelm your illustration. So I would just take a Sorcerer's Delight and put it in between where a Heart of Diamond, or, in between that line where you have the A Heart of and Diamond. Like, I would put it right there. That's just me, though.
And you could just make everything a shade smaller, so that it's not necessarily moving it, but just like shrinking it down a shade, a couple font sizes, and then it makes it more easy to see what's behind there.
Yeah, if you wanted to keep the whole title on there, A Heart of Diamond, A Sorcerer's Delight, Volume 1, I would shrink it and possibly make it a little wider to fit about the same area that the top line does. And you can keep the bright yellow, and if you wanted more depth or detail to it, if this font still looks good, small, I would use it even for like all of it. Or change which title has the font. Which title is more important, the overall arcing series or the actual title of the book?
Right.
Cool. And that actually puts us a little over time on The Heart of Diamond.
Okay. I guess moving on then to the figure study, which is for Bronwyn.
Okay.
I'm switching over to Bronwyn's screen, if that is helpful.
I've already got her up. I've got her up.
Oh.
Well, for you, you probably need to
Okay.
switch to her screen. It's not just me.
Not about you anymore.
So this piece was submitted by, his DeviantArt name is Total Nova, and he's not going to be in the chat today. He's actually at work, but he did want me to drop him the link of the video so that he could watch it. I also told him, Jazz, that you were coloring and painting, and I showed you his work, and he's interested in comic books and stuff like that. So I think we might be seeing a little bit more for him, after this point. The figure drawing we see before you, to me, at first glance, was awesome. I could not believe that he's only been drawing for a couple of months, and he pulled off something of this, cleanliness. It's really well, finalized. Chris, do you have any opinions on it?
Sorry, what?
At first glance, how does the figure drawing appear to you?
All right, so from the outsider perspective, again, I am not an artist and usually just don't know what I'm talking about. It looks kind of weird that I can't see a hint of a thumb, I guess. I don't know if I would see it from that angle. And the arm looks a little chubby. I don't know. I don't know what you guys. I'm just making things up, honestly. I don't know what's wrong with it, or it looks pretty good.
You do see what's wrong with it. You just don't know how to describe it.
That could be too. Yes. The shadow also seems a little weird. It's hard to tell. Why is the shadow angled like that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that. Jazz, did you want to point out what you immediately first saw, your first feelings?
My first feelings was the knuckles. The knuckles, what I thought was the knuckles were, and the tendons on the back of the hand that are supposed to lead up into your wrist, were bent and in slightly the incorrect positions. But then Bronwyn pointed out that those are probably veins, and I was like, they're a little bit hard to read as veins because they don't have a soft shadow. And they're not rounded anywhere to indicate that they are veins, because veins are round even underneath your hand. So I think those were supposed to be indications of veins, but I totally thought this was the first finger resting on the ground, right? And I was like, my finger doesn't quite bend like that at the middle joint, but it does at the first. And then after a while, after looking at it, we're like, wait, is that the pinky? And I looked at my pinky and I'm like, it totally bends like that. So not being able to see the thumb, it's really hard to tell what side of the hand this is.
Yeah, that's actually what I thought first too, and then I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. But yeah, absolutely.
So that both of those things highlight the one of the very first things that I find is most important in a minimalistic figure drawing, which is what this is. He didn't add like hyper realistic skin texture. A lot of things are very vague, just so that you can get a suggestion of the form. All of that is like, it's a technique, of just starting out with figure drawing. You keep everything light so that you don't overwhelm the piece with detail. And there's no problem with that, except for you have to put in your major landmarks. So if you do not have the thumb visible in the piece, you have to have the bone of your ulna, which is the like little nubby pinky bone. Like inside your arm, there's like this bone, and it has a ridge that pops out on everyone. And even if the angle of it makes it so that you can't see it, you, as an artist, you have to make the choice to put it there, or people will miss the visual cue as to which side it is. Because unless you had like just the suggestion of the thumb going off over there, or maybe if this was supposed to be the first finger, the thumb pad under here, it would be super hard to tell, as it kind of is right now. So then the second thing I would suggest is that the way you approach this is not wrong. The way you approach drawing it in particular is looking and sketching, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. To be more correct, you could try sketching through the form. So using a series of pieces to construct the hand, and then making sure those are light so that you can go on top of those and correct as you go. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat just in case I'm supposed to be saying or reading something. So the draw through it would be my next suggestion, because there's no correct way of approaching a figure drawing. There's just some methods that make it easier to hit it the first time. So when you're placing these little detailed landmarks, I can see that you saw them when you were actually doing it. Like those were the things that stood out the most. So those were what you drew. Perfect. Placement is key, and that's another part of construction, but that's where you have to know a little bit of anatomy. Knowing a little bit, not like you have to name all the bones in the hand and all the muscles in the hand, what they attach to or anything like that. That's excessive for an artist. But knowing the anatomy and where it falls can help you place these things inside your own drawing, which is always going to be a little bit off. And if you know where these things are supposed to go, then they start to make a little bit more sense as far as when you start constructing it. So with this first finger or pinky, if this is supposed to be a first finger, this webbing portion would distend a little bit more, and the angle could not actually exist because of the anatomy. However, if it was a pinky, then the only problem is proportion. The proportion of your fingers has to fall below a series of arcs, and your pinky would be something like a couple centimeters shorter than that, even at this resting position. So I would just say, keep practicing, but, not just drawing from sight, but drawing from understanding. Mm-hmm. So my third point there would be anatomy. Sorry, I'm saying so much.
You're good. You're not pausing a lot in between. So could you actually show us like a little tiny sketch of how you would construct a hand from the shapes?
Right. Okay, I can absolutely do that. So if it was generally in this position, which I'm going to take as the pinky is resting and the hand is like maybe holding something. Hold on, sorry, let me do this on a new layer. boop. So yeah, if the hand was holding something, right, and the pinky was resting, and then your wrist is going off, I would start with a gesture. And it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else, it just needs to make sense to you. And then I would build a construction around it. So start with a box, because you know that the 5 bones of the hand have to fit inside this box. That gives you somewhere to start. You know, the bones of the wrist, are a joint, so you can simplify that as a ball, and then you can attach the wrist to it, and that helps you establish a bunch of guidelines so that your drawing stays within a set construction, right? So even if, like, I use the method of like sticks and balls when I do fingers, but a lot of people use a lot more squares, and that might be simpler. So you can also use squares to do this type of thing. But yeah, so I would box out where you're going to put it, and then think about simple anatomy. So joint, joint, joint. And at this stage is where you start correcting things. So you might notice, like, there's no arc. You go back and you correct that so that the first finger, second finger, third finger, pinky are following an arc. The same with the knuckles. And it's far easier to fix things at this stage than at this stage. Because I noticed you're keeping everything very clean, and that's good. But if you clean up rather than stopping yourself from getting messy, you have a tendency to stick with any small mistakes. So then on top of that is what I would do a final drawing on top of a series of guidelines. I don't know if this is the same way I explained it last night, but it's still following the same basic rules. So the last thing on the technical side of things is how you establish depth and what's necessary in a figure drawing and what's not. Shapes that you don't plan on fleshing out, you don't have to put in. You could have left all that black, and it would have given just as much of a visual cue as these shapes, which don't actually give a cue. They're just, how would you call that, Jasmine? They're just hanging out,
Yep, yep, they are.
Is that a technical term?
That is the technical
term?
These are just hanging out. They're not adding anything to the piece, so they're distracting from it. Mm-hmm. Even leaving the figure in the back that you didn't plan on fleshing out as a general shape is fine, as long as you make it much more clear than that. So if you were putting this foot in, you would at least need to suggest what ankle it was supposed to be, or maybe not put it in at all. Okay, I know I said last thing, but hatching is a technique, and I think that's what you were going for. If you were using traditional charcoal, which is what we use for figure drawings in art school, you would just smudge it all over the place and black that out nice and clean. But if you're going to do hatching, you have to do it in one smooth line that I'm not doing right now. You have to do it in one smooth line, or it starts to look messy. It's the same with a hand. Just start small and then build up. And that's how you can add shading and depth if you don't want to do shading and depth.
Yeah, there's also another way you could do it. If you're using a softer graphite pencil, or just a graphite pencil, which you probably are, you can use a really soft paintbrush to help smudge some of that together. I've seen other pencil artists do that, and it has a really great effect.
Right, I totally agree. In person with my fingers, I do this. In digital art, I just have a tendency of throwing in a nice, clean, hard line on something and just leaving it at that. You can also get away with a lot with simplifying shapes. So you could lie to people is essentially what I'm saying. You could say, hey, this was the reference I was using, this is my artistic representation of it, and bam, you're still fine. So if you had simplified the finger to something even like that, so that you could have made it something more legible in the piece to yourself, it would have still flown by people, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I totally see what that's supposed to be. So yeah, that's what I got. Chris?
Cool. Well, that actually, we used our 10 minutes there. So I think that was probably plenty of advice for him to take to heart.
Okay.
Cool.
So
Awesome.
I guess we're going to end the show then, yeah?
Yeah, I guess so. Thanks to everyone who submitted. Obviously, it's really cool to see this picking up some momentum here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you guys for driving this this production, and I guess we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you everyone for watching. We all really appreciate it, especially artists who send in their work. If you would like a piece critiqued, be it music, a really short literature piece, or art of any kind, you can send it to jasmine@watchmework.com. That's Jasmine without an E at watchmework.com. Thank you, Bronwyn. Thank you, Chris, for hosting the show with me. And I guess we'll catch you guys all next time.
Okay.
Bye!
Bye.